This isn't a normal grammar lesson where I teach you form and structure. Instead, I'm going to show you when to use different tenses for describing graphs. I'll show you common phrases you can use to ensure that your prepositions are accurate. And I have some advice for you on punctuation and superlatives, all in the context of answering a Task 1 academic question. My name is Lar Ryan. I've been an IELTS examiner, I've been an IELTS teacher at the British Council, I have over a decade of experience helping IELTS students achieve success, and I am the founder of Complete Test Success. So we're going to start with tenses. The first one we are looking at is present simple passive, and this can actually be used with any graph. So it doesn't actually matter if the graph is showing you information from the past, the present, or the future. This tense will always be accurate. To use this tense, we describe what somebody that's looking at the graph can see. We can use phrases like it can be seen that, is shown to, or is seen to. So let's look at some examples. So this is the description from the chart we're going to look at. It says, the chart below shows Portuguese people's favourite season divided into 3 different age groups. Because there is no year mentioned, we must assume that the data is based on the situation in Portugal right now. Here is the rest of the question, and what I want to describe is that summer was the most popular season with every age group. So using present simple passive, I can say, it can be seen that summer is the most popular season among all the age groups. You'll notice that present simple passive was used in combination with present simple in this sentence. Next, summer is shown to be the most popular season among all the age groups. And with this phrase, we needed to use the infinitive. Finally, summer is seen to be the most popular season among all the age groups. And again, we needed the infinitive this time. We're going to look at another example where we use present simple passive, but this chart is from the past. This time, the description at the top of the question says, the chart below illustrates the different reasons that patients visited a British chiropractor's office. Here, you'll notice the word visited is in the past form, so this is how we know the data is about the past. And of course, at the bottom of the question, we can also see the years are in the past as well. What I want to describe this time is which was the most common reason for visiting this chiropractor in 1990. To describe this, we can say, it can be seen that muscle pain was the most common reason in 1990. And this time, because the chart is in the past, we needed past simple. Or we can say, muscle pain is shown to have been the most common reason in 1990. And because this time we're talking about the past, we needed to use the perfect infinitive. And the last one, muscle pain is seen to have been the most common reason in 1990. And once again, we used the perfect infinitive. So in the IELTS test, sometimes you'll have a graph that's about just 1 year, and sometimes the graph will be about more than 1 year. The first one we looked at about Portugal was all based in 1 year. Now, you might get a year in the past, or you might get a question like this, where it doesn't say exactly what year it is, and that means we're going to assume the graph is based on current data, and we know that present simple is the correct tense to use in our answer. To describe the popularity of winter with the oldest age group, we could say, for the Portuguese people aged 65 years and older, winter is the least popular season. Or if we want to describe autumn and winter for the youngest age group, we can write, for the Portuguese people aged under 15 years old, autumn and winter are the least popular seasons. Next, we will look at past simple, and this is actually the most common tense that you will use in academic writing task 1. This chart is for the years 2017, 2018 and 2019, so we know that it's all based in the past, and past simple is the appropriate tense to describe the data in our essay. To describe China in 2017, I will say, in 2017, China was the most popular destination, or in 2017, the largest number of tourists visited China. Or to describe China and Italy together in 2017, I can say, in 2017, China and Italy were the most popular destinations. And then you might get a graph which shows you predictions for the future. Most IELTS candidates make the exact same mistake when they're trying to describe predictions, and they use will or going to. But in fact, for these types of predictions, these tenses are not appropriate. Here's an example of a question with predictions, and as you can see, the final year shown is 2040. When describing this data, instead of using will or going to, we will use phrases like is expected to, is forecast to, is predicted to, is projected to, or is shown to. And here's an example describing the data in 2040. In 2040, revenue is expected to be approximately $14 billion. And I can directly replace the phrase is expected to with any of the other phrases we've looked at for predictions. And sometimes when there are predictions in the chart, we will also need to use present perfect. Now, I said might need because we would only need it if there's data for this year in the chart. So here's a line graph with predictions, and to describe the data for this year, we would say, this year, the revenue has remained steady at roughly $14 billion. And we will also need past perfect in our answer if we use the preposition by to refer to a year. For example, if I use the phrase by 1990, I would need to use past perfect to accurately describe whatever data is coming next. Now, in this graph, I want to describe 1980 and 1990, so I can describe it in this way. In 1980, the revenue was approximately $13 billion, and by 1990, this had increased to about $15 billion. And because I used the preposition by, past perfect was required for my description. So, as I'm sure you've just noticed, there are quite a few different tenses that you will need to describe graphs. If you're not comfortable with any of those tenses, I would really encourage you to address that before your IELTS test. Now, you might not know what areas of grammar you make mistakes in, and if that's the case, you should join me in my free live feedback lessons, and I'll be able to tell you about that. You'll find a link for this in the description below. So next we're moving on to prepositions, and this is probably one of the most common grammar errors you will see in Academic Task 1. Now, unfortunately, prepositions don't have any useful grammar rules that you can follow. That means it's actually best to treat them like vocabulary, where you learn collocations and full phrases rather than individual words. In this part of the lesson, I'm going to teach you phrases you can use, and these phrases have prepositions in them. That means by using these phrases, you will definitely have accurate prepositions in your answer. And that, of course, is going to help you bring up your grammatical range and accuracy score. So let's look at some examples. So in this chart, if I want to describe the data for spring with the youngest age group, I can use the phrase the percentage of. This can be changed depending on the question. So you might say the amount of, the number of, or whatever is appropriate. So the full sentence is the percentage of under 15-year-olds who like spring best is about 30%. Keep in mind, this part highlighted here is all the subject of the sentence, so you'll need to make sure you adapt that appropriately to the question you're answering. Next, I want to describe spring for the middle age group, so I can use the phrase the figure for. Again, this could be the number for, the percentage for, or whatever else is appropriate for the question. So altogether, the percentage of under 15-year-olds who like spring best is about 30%, and the figure for people aged 15 to 64 years old is about 35. And once more, just be careful to adapt the full phrase to match the question you're writing about. So those phrases we just looked at are suitable for any graph, but in the rest of the lesson, the phrases related to prepositions that we're about to learn are only suitable when the graph has 2 or more years. And here we want to describe the graph in 1980. We will say, in 1980, the revenue was about $13 billion. But because 1980 is the first year in the chart, we actually have other ways to describe this as well. We can say the revenue began with about $13 billion. The revenue started at about $13 billion. The revenue started the period at about $13 billion. About $13 billion in revenue was earned at the start of the period. Next, we're going to look at phrases to help us transition from one year to the next. Let's say I want to describe the data for Spain in 2017 and in 2018. I can say the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain increased from 18.4% in 2017 to 25.4% in 2018. From 2017 to 2018, the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain increased by 7%. From 2017 to 2018, the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain had an increase of 7%. The most basic way to refer to a year is by using the preposition in. but we should know some alternatives as well. Again, we're going to look at Spain in 2017 and 2018. I can say the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain was 18.4% in 2017 and 25.4% in 2018. So here I've used the most basic preposition, in. Alternatively, the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain was 18.4% in 2017 and after 1 year had increased to 25.4%. The percentage of tourists travelling to Spain was 18.4% in 2017 and over the next year increased to 25.4%. There was a 7% increase in the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain between 2017 and 2018. There was a 7% increase in the percentage of tourists travelling to Spain from 2017 to 2018. Next, I want to show you how to describe trends that last for 3 or more years. Looking at the red line, which is low back pain, we can see that the upward trend lasted from 1990 to 1995 until 2000. And we can describe this by saying, from 1990 to 1995, the number of patients visiting with low back pain increased from about 6 to roughly 7, and this continued to increase until 2000, reaching approximately 8. But in task 1, typically we shouldn't describe every year like this. We're just supposed to focus on the key features. And because nothing really significant happened in 95, it's better not to actually mention that in our answer. Instead, we would say, in 1990, the number of patients visiting with low back pain was about 6, and this figure increased until 2000, reaching approximately 8. And then there are several ways that we can describe the final year in the chart. This time we're going to look at low back pain, the red line again, in 2010. So the various alternatives I have are the number of patients visiting with low back pain ended the period at about 7, or ended the period on about 7. We could say patients visiting with low back pain had a final figure of about 7. About 7 patients were visiting with low back pain at the end of the period or by the end of the period. I really hope you're learning a lot from this lesson, and if you are, please click like on the video. But more importantly for you, my next lesson is going to show you 2 simple ways to organize absolutely any task 1 graph, and by doing this, that will mean that you're always able to write effective overviews. Make sure that you don't miss out on that by liking my page or subscribing. Now we're going to look at punctuation, and as you'd expect, it's just the normal punctuation rules that apply to academic writing task 1. But there is one punctuation mistake that I see over and over again. And this is a mistake that I see even when the IELTS candidate has very good punctuation throughout the rest of their essay. The mistake is this: they copy the punctuation from the legend. As I've highlighted here, the legend always capitalizes the first letter of each category. But we shouldn't copy this in our answer. Instead, we just have to follow the normal rules that govern English punctuation. Here's an example. Summer was the favourite and spring was the second favourite season in each age group. Autumn was the third most popular for the 15 to 64-year-olds and the 65 years and older group, but it was joined by winter as the least favourite season with the youngest age group. Of course, summer and autumn have been capitalised here because they are the first word in a sentence, but for spring and winter, they just start with lowercase letters as normal. And finally, there are a few things about superlatives that I want to help you with. Now, quite often I see candidates write the word second highest without the hyphen in between, so make sure that you use that correctly. And besides that, there's some vocabulary I want to show you that when used with superlatives will help you to more flexibly describe what's happening in any graph that you look at. These examples are focused on the fact that in 2018, Spain had the highest number of tourists. In 2018, Spain was the country with the most tourists. In 2017, China had the most tourists, but it was replaced by Spain in 2018. In 2018, Spain replaced China as the most visited destination. In 2017, Spain had the third highest number of tourists, but by 2018, it had become the most visited. In 2018, Spain accounted for the highest number of tourists. So combine the language that you've learned in this lesson with my vocab and my coherence and cohesion lesson, and you'll have absolutely no problem describing any graph that you get in Academic IELTS Writing Task 1. If you haven't already seen those other 2 lessons, you'll find links in the description. If you have seen them all, leave a comment to let me know which one was most helpful for you. Or if you have any other questions for me, you can leave those in the comments as well.